Everyone has something to share, in either wisdom, story, or logic, and it's clearly amazing to hear all the differing missing links discovered by people unique to their own journeys, and in how they have come to discover them. Together, we can help to build a bigger picture for a better future, for a brighter tomorrow. Let's stand united. Let's remove the veils, and let's create a new world together. Are you that missing link? Join Jesse Hale on the Missing Link Talk Show as he helps to unveil the mystery through the unique wisdom and story of others.
3, 2, 1.
Welcome everybody here back to the Missing Link. Today we're excited to talk to a Canadian veteran who was part of the Beirut bombing for attack 40 years ago. He's had a lot of PTSD. He is here to share his story about his journey and what he remembers about the account. So welcome to the Missing Link. Michael Bell, how are you doing today, brother?
Great. Thank you very much, Jesse. I appreciate being on your show.
Well, welcome. So why don't you start off with telling us about yourself, about your journey, a little bit about your background, your education, maybe what part of the world you grew up in, what part of the world you're in now, if you can share that information, anything that you wanted to share about yourself, especially if people are hearing you here for the first time, and you can get into the stuff that you remember, anything that you want to just share. Now is your time, is the floor. And once you're done sharing, then I'll start asking you some questions.
Thank you, Jesse. So yes, my name is Michael Bell. I am a Canadian veteran. I'm a veteran of the 2nd Battalion Royal Canadian Regiment. And thereafter, I was also in the Air Force as an airframe aero engine mechanic for 406 Squadron in Shearwater, Nova Scotia. Education-wise, I managed to actually complete my education. I have a bachelor degree in information technology and a master's degree in business. I have a large number of qualifications behind me, mostly in technology. But today, as you say, I have a story to share. Today is July 4th, American Independence Day. And I would specifically now like to reach out to the American Brotherhood Foundation, who is a foundation that supports U.S. Marines, specifically the Beirut Marines. That organization was founded by Elisa Camera, and doing a wonderful job, a selfless person who lost her brother, Sergeant Miko Camera, in the Beirut suicide bombing in October 23rd, 1983. So my participation in all of this. October 23rd, 1983, early in the morning, I was actually posted in Cyprus. I was a peacekeeper in Cyprus. And the night before, I had been doing a 24-hour shift as a duty driver. I was in the infantry. My primary job was to be a soldier, but we have additional duties, and I was assigned to transport. The morning of October 23rd, 1983, I went to the mess hall for breakfast. As they say, I was coming off an early morning shift. So one of the first people there, and my transport sergeant met up with me, and he said, listen, I know you're just coming off a 24-hour shift, but I've got nobody else to send. Would you volunteer to do a special duty? We need you to go to the Larnaca airport. And there's a C-130 transport coming. That's a Hercules transport. And we need you to assist the load master Whatever he asks you to do, you do it and stay with him as long as you're required. So I said, fine, is there any other instructions? And he said, the only thing you have to remember is when you approach the Larnaca airport, you have to use the back gate. And he said, when you see the back gate, you'll see Cypriot police there, Greek Cypriot police. And he said, you'll probably see some Marines. So off I went. I drove to the Larnaca airport. It was actually a nice day. I was enjoying the drive there. I reached the airport and I found the back gate, no problem. I was driving a UN vehicle, you know, the white UN vehicles with the big blue UN all over it. So, and a Canadian flag. So I went through the gate and I waited on the tarmac for this military transport to show up, and it did. I still didn't know specifically what I was going to be doing, but the flight arrived and the rear ramp dropped and the doors opened up on the aircraft, and Marines started pouring out, and there were also some other people that I assumed were diplomats or something, government people. They were well dressed, and they had their wives and children with them. And I immediately saw 3 U.S. Marines approaching me. 2 of them were supporting the person in the middle, the soldier in the middle. He had bandages on his forehead and a little bit of blood seeping out. You could tell he needed the support. And as they were approaching me, one of those Marines actually looked at me and he saw the Canadian flag on my uniform. And he made a comment about that. He said, look, it's a Canadian soldier. Those guys are on the other side of the border from me. And at first I was thinking, like, does this guy know me? You know, because he was pretty quick with that. But in any event, he was pretty friendly. And he said, you know, these guys are good people. So he started asking questions about, you know, where do we go? And there were some British buses at the end of the tarmac, driven by British soldiers. And I was leading them to the bus, still didn't know what was happening. And he proceeded to tell the story that just hours previous, they had gone through a bombing in Beirut, blew up their barracks, and a number of them started speaking to me at that time because they were all catching up to me and wondering where to go, what to do, and started relaying these stories of things that had happened early in the morning. And I'm not going to repeat a lot of it because it wasn't pleasant. A lot of these guys had a look of shock on their face. They were pretty emotional. One of them grabbed hold of me and gave me a big hug, emotional hug. And I was at a loss for what was going on, to tell you the truth. And as time progressed, you know, it becomes clear that they went through a horrific attack. And I will be honest, at that time, when the realization sank in that these Marines are only about 100 miles away from us, that could very easily happen to us here in Cyprus. So I was overcome with a warm, sickly feeling in my stomach. I mean, the stories were starting to get to me. It was almost as if I was right there with them when this happened. But they're treating me really well. I mean, they're treating me like I was one of them. It was just unbelievable. The feeling, I don't know how to describe it. It was just unbelievable. In any event, I had other duties there. I did have to help the loadmaster. We had to get all the equipment and the gear off that transport, and so I was pretty busy for a few hours loading up all the buses and spending time with these soldiers, reassuring them where they were going. They were being sent to Akrotiri, and I knew Akrotiri pretty well because I had already driven a number of UN soldiers from other countries, Denmark, Sweden, and whatnot, to a hospital there in Akrotiri. There's a British Air Force base in Akrotiri. And I thought, well, that's what I should be doing, is reassuring these Marines that they're going to be okay. They're going to be safe. They're being driven by British soldiers. They're going to a well-defended British base and a fantastic hospital. It was an older hospital, but fantastic in terms of the support, the people that were in that hospital. As I said, I had been there before and actually met some of the nurses and whatnot, so I knew it well. I told them, when you go there, you'll even see some phantom fighters sitting on the tarmac. So I saw a few smiles, and I felt like I was making a difference. And I finally finished everything up later on in the day and saw them on their way. And there was a few smiles and waves and some gratitude. And I thought, well, there, I did my job. I didn't let myself down because I was a little bit upset about what had been happening. So it was time to drive back to my base. And to get to my base, I had to take a UN road. So for anyone that is not familiar with the events on the island of Cyprus and what the Canadians were doing in Cyprus, Cyprus, one part of Cyprus at that time is where all the Greeks lived, Greek Cypriots, and the other part, Turkish Cypriots, resided on the other part of Cyprus, and we're UN, and we're obviously in the middle as peacekeepers. So in any event, I eventually I got back to my base. We called it the Leisure Palace. It used to be a 5-star hotel at one point in Nicosia. And we called it the Leisure Palace because you could tell that one time it was probably quite a swanky place, you know. When we were there, we actually spent some time fixing up the grounds and maintaining it. A great place to be. But in any event, when I was coming back through Nicosia, I saw that the news agents just outside of the Leisure Palace were really busy. There was a lot of crowds around all the news vendors. And I thought, well, you know, I'm going to stop by there and grab a paper and see what's going on. So I grabbed a paper, and there, right in the front page, lo and behold, there were pictures of the bombing of Beirut and the devastation. I mean, here I was. I already had the stories in my head from the direct source, and now I have the images to match, and they were pretty devastating. I got back in to the Leisure Palace, and I met up with a few of my buddies there. They were wondering what I was doing, and I had told them that I had to go to the Larnaca airport and help some Marines. And my sergeant, Andy Wall, met up with me and asked me, how did everything go, Bell? And I said, fine, everybody's good. Everybody's where they should be. And that was pretty well it. The very next day, I had to continue on with my duties. And as I said, I was in transport at the time. So I'm shuttling personnel on and off the lines, and supplies, mail runs, and whatnot, all sorts of duties. And when I was going into the buffer zone, I had noticed that the Turks were now a little bit more aggressive than they used to be. Before, they used to, just ask you, who you were and that sort of thing. But in the spot that I had to go to get to our guys on the observation posts, now I was seeing Turkish soldiers running up along top of the rooftops, and they were loading their AK-47s. That's their automatic rifles that they use. And they were actually loading them now at us, loading and pointing them at us, and shouting in Arabic, something that we obviously didn't understand. And they didn't look too happy anymore. So there was a change that I immediately saw the very next day. And we, once in a while, we would go on to the Turkish side of the island to buy things at the market and whatnot. And I saw banners now up, and the banners actually in Arabic and English said, death to the Westerners, death to Americans, and all this on the banners. The mood had definitely changed. Things are starting to get pretty aggressive. So, this was impacting me personally. I was no longer feeling safe there. I had the personal experience of dealing with these guys directly out of Beirut, and now I'm seeing the changes that are happening there. And it wasn't good. Now I understood. I came to understood too, by the way, that the whole reason why I was asked to go to the back gate of the Larnaca airport was the Greek Cypriot government specifically didn't want their relationship well known with the rest of the Cypriots, the Turkish Cypriots. Because nobody really wanted American participation going on in Cyprus. And, if the Greeks were helping them, God only knows what that would do to influence or irritate the situation there. So I could now understand why I was told to specifically to go, to a back gate, and everything was being kept quiet. But no longer. It's all over the media. And as I said, we're starting to see things change. And just a couple of weeks after this whole incident with the bombing in Beirut, the Turkish Cypriot government decided to unilaterally declare independence from Cyprus. Now, they didn't have the legal authority to do that. However, they took advantage of the situation, which is why I was seeing all this, this aggression and whatnot, they've just decided. I don't know if you know the history of Cyprus, but Cyprus, at one time, it was solely a Greek Cypriot island. However, there were Turkish, ethnic Turkish people living there, and the Turks, they were being picked on here and there, and at one point they asked the Turkish government to step in and help defend them. So in 1974 there was a war there, and it involved tanks and everything else. We were there, Canadians were there, our airborne regiment was there, and the Canadians had developed quite the reputation, to tell you the truth, keeping both sides apart, well respected by both sides for what we do. In any event, that was no longer the situation. They just decided that that's it. We're going to declare independence, and things. That was November 15th when that happened, and by December, the escalations continued, and the Turks actually shot and killed a Greek soldier in my sector of the buffer zone. And as I said initially, my job was in transport, but we were starting to rotate people out for holidays and whatnot and leave. And so a private LeBlanc and myself actually then had to take our turn on an observation post over one evening and into the early morning out in that buffer zone, not too far away from where this Greek soldier had been killed. 2 o'clock in the morning, around 2 o'clock in the morning, the dead of the morning, the silence of the morning. Private LeBlanc and I heard somebody coming through the bombed out. There was a bombed out building in front of us, and we heard the rubble being disturbed, and we had night vision. So we used our night vision to see what was going on. Shouldn't be a Turkish soldier in the buffer zone or a Greek soldier in the buffer zone. They shouldn't be there. That's our space, keeping them apart. And lo and behold, what did we see? We saw 2 Turkish soldiers with bayonets approaching us, and they were pretty close. And we had to think very quickly, what are we going to do about this situation? Because we specifically had the same orders that the U.S. Marines had at that time when they were attacked. You are not allowed to load your weapon unless fired upon.
And bayonets are guns?
We had our guns.
No, you said they had bayonets. So bayonets are guns?
No, bayonets. I'm sorry. Bayonets are actually, they're the long knives that go on the end of a rifle. When you're going to do hand-to-hand combat, you use a bayonet. So their intentions were clear to us. They're going to be using bayonets, and they know, I'm assuming they know, everybody knew, we're not allowed to load our weapons unless we're fired upon. So it's a little bit of an issue. And I very quickly, after thinking about what I had just seen with the Marines and understanding what they had gone through, I went out of the OP and I stood in a position where they would clearly see me. And I loaded my weapon very slowly and purposely, forcing the round into the chamber. I wanted them to know I'm loading my weapon. My life is threatened. We both felt threatened, and you're pretty close. and I was out there now by myself doing this. So I rose, I had the night vision with me, and I checked again, and I could clearly see them. They were so close. I could see every expression in their face. And I don't know if you know what night vision looks like. It's everything's green and it's all illuminated. So I could see that they were pretty upset that they had been caught, and pretty angry, and really close. And I was hoping that this would deter these guys, and it did. I guess they all of a sudden realized this guy means business. He's fully armed and loaded, ready to do business. So they left, thankfully for me. All of a sudden, I had this realization that, you know what, the Marines in Beirut, they didn't have that chance. They came as we did, young peacekeepers, no experience, and they were asleep in their beds at night. And a suicide bomber decided to take advantage of that. And he drove right through their sentries with a truck laden with explosives, and he immediately killed 241 soldiers. 220 of them were Marines, and it was the Marines specifically that I was dealing with, helping them evacuate out of Beirut. So there's that realization. As I say, I was 23 years old, and they were around the same age, and thinking, you know, what could possibly happen, because you don't know, right? And then all of a sudden that order, it really becomes horrendous in your head that there's nothing I could do. I couldn't immediately respond. So you have to think quickly, especially in our case where we had two attackers using bayonets. And I didn't want to create an international incident. And as a soldier, you're taught to maintain calm and whatnot. So I have to give credit and kudos to our training. You know, there was no panic or whatnot. We just stood our ground, and I'm still here. I'm still here to tell the story. However, that definitely left me with memories that were pretty upsetting. And I went about my business, but I had all sorts of other, thoughts about these Marines and everything that they had done. But I couldn't talk about it. I didn't know what was going on with me from that point on. I had this heightened sense of awareness now where if there's any danger or anything suspicious happening, I was always on the alert. I was having nightmares, and I did not know at that time that was PTSD until, if you can believe it, just last summer, I was with some fellow veterans that I knew from back in those days. And they told me, "Hey, Mike, there's something wrong. You've got to go and see somebody." And they actually invited me to a event, and there was a psychologist. A friend of mine introduced me to a friend that was a psychologist, and he was the one that said, "Hey, listen, you've got issues. When you get back home, you've got to go see somebody." So for 40 years, I didn't realize that this was having an impact on me, all kinds of relationships and problems, until I got a hold of Veterans Affairs, and I finally got a hold of a psychologist. And it's all now, after 40 years, coming out. And one of the things that I did was I happened to be looking on the internet, about the Beirut Marines, and I was able to find this American Brother Foundation who assists Marines and their families. This Elisa Camara, and I was speaking to some of them, and it was a fantastic opportunity because those people have had each other all this time for 40 years to talk about this, and the support that they had from organizations. So I guess this is part of what I'm talking about now, PTSD. Sometimes veterans don't even know that they have it. They have all kinds of issues. I've had the anger, sleep issues, social issues, just staying away from people because now I don't trust anything. And you can talk to veterans about this, and they'll tell you, no, we don't trust anything, and it's too hard to adapt back into civilian life. We just don't trust anything anymore. In any event, I'm getting all the help that I need right now from Veterans Affairs, and part of what I've been told to do is share my story. And I couldn't think of a more appropriate time to share it and thank the Marines that I met over there. And, on Independence Day, I thought it was important for you and I to discuss this today. And I'm so glad that you allowed me to do that.
Wow, that's quite a journey that you've been on. What's your thoughts on the whole scenario of why that happened, and and you being able to witness it?
Well, when you're older and you look back, you can put things in perspective because you understand some of the history of what was going on. When you're young, you just have no idea. You have no idea. I can say, as a peacekeeper, a young peacekeeper, standing in between two combatants, you're the guy in the middle. And think about this: you're the guy in the middle without your weapon loaded. Think about that. When you're young, you don't think about it unless something happens. But since that time, if you look at the world and all the countries that the Canadian military has been serving in, it's just astounding how from that time, which I actually think that the trouble in Beirut, it definitely, it went to Cyprus. The Turkish government took advantage of that and unilaterally made the decision, that's it. We're not waiting for the UN. We're not waiting for anyone. We don't care. We're going to just start doing what we're going to do. So it has impacted the world. It impacted me. I know it's impacted other people. I'm just happy now that I've come out of the darkness and I'm able to start talking about it, share that story, because there wouldn't be very many people that knew other than the guys that I was directly involved with.
Canadians have always kind of been in the peacekeepers, throughout the world. We were always known as the peacekeeping nation, trying to, kind of like you said, go in between some of these groups or, countries that would be fighting against each other. But when Stephen Harper was, prime minister, he kind of changed that, and he took an active bombing, like an active role in the war in Syria. And we became active bombers, and we were no longer peacekeepers. We became military bombers where we were, doing things like, did you hear about that? And what was your thoughts on Canada going from a peacekeeping role into an active military aggressive role?
Well, I can say again, because of the PTSD, there were certain things I didn't fully pay attention to anymore. I just wanted to keep a lot of that stuff away because it's a trigger. I still have nightmares. But in terms of Canadians taking a more active and aggressive role in the military, I would have to say that unfortunately, the world has become a very dangerous place. We have terrorists running around killing innocent people. We can see what's happening, over in Ukraine and in different parts of Africa and whatnot. Innocent people are being killed. Somebody has to step up somewhere, and I don't think it's no longer it's a peacekeeping role myself. Some of it I can understand why you would send in, for instance, the U.S. Marines. They're known for a combat role, but as I said, when they were over in Beirut, this completely took them by surprise because they thought that they were peacekeepers. They were with a multinational peacekeeping force. They took a different approach. So you look at them, who usually typically had a more aggressive role, and they were trying to do what we did, try to become peacekeepers and stand in the middle and say, hey, no, let's everybody talk and try to get along. And it just didn't work. Things have escalated. I don't know, even, you look at the UN and whatnot. I just don't know what to think about what is happening in the world right now, because everything just doesn't seem the same anymore. The world doesn't seem like a safe place, and at some point, somebody does have to step in and say enough's enough. So
you were under the UN banner as a peacekeeper, a Canadian. You said you were in a UN truck, so you were kind of under the UN banner.
yes.
What's your thoughts on the United Nations now? Have you looked into much of what's, like you said, things are not safe? It seems like we have all these organizations, but the world seems to get less safe every day. It's
Well,
like when
and,
they do a war on terror, things get worse. They do a war on drugs, things get worse. It seems like, whenever they declare a war on something, they're not making things better. It seems like the world is getting in worse shape once they, do these things.
well, it seems to me like there's a lot of corruption now. It doesn't seem like the same organization. I mean, if you look at World War II and the birth of the United Nations and whatnot, it was a different organization back then. A lot of the members were different, and after World War II, the world definitely no longer had a taste for war. I mean, the whole world was living with the horror of it. It was a world war. But in all honesty, I have studied history, and the further you become removed from that event, I think people just take things for granted, and it's just not working the way it was meant to work, and people people don't think the same way that they used to think back then. There was a lot of pride in workmanship and a lot of pride in so many things. And where has that all gone? We are in a sad state of affairs.
What's your thoughts on Canada? Are you proud to be Canadian? Are you proud that you served for your country the way things have been heading as of late?
I am proud to be Canadian. I am proud to have been in the military. I don't think the military is getting all the support that it needs.
Ukraine sure is getting a lot of support.
Well, Ukraine's getting a lot of support, but we don't seem to be. That's a little bit worrisome. I mean, we have a pretty big country here. We have a lot of borders to defend, and people have to think about that. Also, there's secondary roles that the military play, search and rescue, and working with disasters and humanitarian responses and whatnot. And we don't seem to be able to do that role anymore. That is worrisome. But if I had to do it all over again, would I? Yes, I would. I was really proud of everybody back then. I mean, I'm actually right now looking at a picture of a platoon that I was in, and it was quite a mix of people in there. It didn't matter about your race. Politics was out of the military back then. You weren't allowed to engage in political conversations. I think that you can no longer. You can't now. You get in trouble if you do that kind of thing. You are representing Canada, and there's no place in there for politics, race, sexual problems, and whatnot. And to tell you the truth, I'm just a little bit put off by everything that I see now in the military, because some of it, quite frankly, I think there's witch hunts going on, and it shouldn't happen. One day, everybody's going to depend on the military to be there and help them when they need the military to be there, and they may show up, but they might not have everything necessary to do the job. That's what worries me the most.
How long did you serve for?
I served a little over 8 years.
And then when you left, was it an honorable discharge? How did you get?
Oh yeah, I was. So I can talk specifically about that. After I did this tour that I just spoke about in Cyprus, as I said, things were happening to me. I had PTSD and I didn't know it. And at that time, I don't even know if it was called PTSD back then, but I certainly did not know what the hell was going on. All I knew was I no longer wanted to be in that role. So I put in for, we call it a remuster application to go into another trade. But at that time, all the trades were filled. So the career manager gave me some advice. He said, well, the military typically doesn't like letting go of good soldiers. So what you should probably do is get out and come back in. You probably get into your trade a lot faster. So I thought about it, and I thought, okay, well, I'll do that. And I got out, and I tried to adjust to Civvy Street, tried to adjust being with civilians again. And I actually got a position working for a company sort of like Costco, but back then it was called Titan Wholesale Club. I was a manager, and I guess I was pretty aggressive, and I didn't think anything of it, considering the environment that I came from. But other managers would say, well, you're firm but fair. The thing that we notice is when you have a goal or you have a mission, you don't stop until you've achieved that goal or that mission. So they loved it. In terms of getting work done and whatnot, great. However, I wasn't getting sleep, and I was having some aggression issues. I can admit that. I tried to take university courses back then, and I couldn't focus. So I finally made the decision, it's time for me to get back in. So I did. I got back into the military. However, when I got back into the military the second time, I don't know what happened, but I ended up being frozen at my same rank and pay the entire time I was back in. However, I will say that I excelled through all my training, and I did very well. And before you knew it, I was really having a lot of issues again. I had sleep issues and other issues, and because I wasn't promoted and wasn't going anywhere, I ended up years later getting back out again because they had it was called a RFP. They were looking to reduce the size of the military. It was a forces reduction plan. So I ended up taking that, and once again, I got out and back on Civvy Street, but I went back to school, and I became a workaholic. That was how I was putting the PTSD and all the bad effects at bay. I just became so focused on work, and I neglected everything else. So I neglected relationships with friends, family. I had a wife. I was divorced. I was with somebody else for 7 years, and that fell apart. And I had no clue. But what ended up happening was I was such a workaholic. There was no time now for leisure time and, hanging out with friends and doing fun things. I replaced it literally with work. So that's why I only spent 8 years. However, again, if none of this had happened, I would have probably stayed my full 20 because I really enjoyed the military. Still today, I love the military. Things happened to me, and I think a few things got missed, but I still love the military. I love that way of life.
Besides this incident that you went through, do you think that there was other things that may have caused your PTSD as well?
Well, I went through quite a bit in Cyprus, so nothing else would have contributed to that because I just didn't have that kind of career anymore. When I was in Cyprus, another thing that happened because of the job that I had to deliver messages to different embassies, and one of them was a Russian embassy. I had to deliver a Christmas invitation of all things to the Russian embassy. We were putting on a show at the Leisure Palace, and so when I arrived at the Russian embassy in Nicosia, there's a big iron gate, and I rang the buzzer, and a voice told me to step inside the gate. Well, I stepped inside the gate, and now I noticed that on the other side of that gate, there's actually 3 other walls, and the door shut behind me. Now I'm in an iron cage, and at the top of it, there's barbed wire at the top of it. And then 2 Russian soldiers ran out, one on either side of that gate, and they had AK-47s, and they did the same thing. They loaded, they caught the action forward, so it's loaded, and now they're pointing that inside where I was, and then the ambassador, or somebody working for the ambassador, came out and asked me what I wanted, and I said, "Hey, I'm just here delivering a Christmas invitation." So he opened up, and he read it, and they just released me. But yeah, all kinds of things happened over there. But yeah, nothing happened once I left the military.
Monica here, I believe she's got a husband who is part of the military and has some PTSD. She said, "I live with a husband that is damaged from it, and it's not easy at all." She says she lives with that HE double hockey stick of it every day. She says, "I sure hope they have helped you." So, have you gotten any help from the military or the government? Have they tried to, have they admitted the PTSD and things, and
Oh yeah,
found out different support places for you?
Yeah, so I went through the whole process with Veterans Affairs, and as far as PTSD is concerned, they pretty well allow you to go and see a psychologist right away until they can determine that you really have PTSD. So you go through all sorts of testing, and which I did, and yeah, I'm receiving a disability pension for it. They've acknowledged it. The specific events haven't been acknowledged, but they've acknowledged that I have the PTSD.
Why do you think that they don't acknowledge the events that happened?
Well, in my particular case, I know the guys out in the line, they know the things that happen out there. And to tell you the truth, we were really busy. I think, when the Turks declared or made that unilateral decision to separate from Cyprus, all kinds of things did start happening. All of a sudden, we just seemed really busy. I know I was. I can recall on November 15th, I think that was a day when everything hit the fan, and we had a young master corporal load up in an armored personnel carrier and went charging off into the line to go pull some guys out of a platoon house or something. Anyways, that was one of my jobs. I had to go in there and bring everybody back. But I just think that sometimes they get so busy that things fall through the cracks. I don't think it's purposely done, because I've actually seen people since my time in Cyprus. I've seen other people actually recognized for the things that they were involved in. So the military can check up on these stories, and if they want to acknowledge it, they will.
Have they gone the medication route? You know, have they tried to pump you full of meds like they do to a lot of people these days, whether they have the trauma or the PTSD? It seems like the doctors, you know, are their first go-to is, you know, here, let's medicate them and, you know, make them forget about everything that's gone on with them.
In all honesty, I because of the psychologist that I have, she actually listens to what I am saying to her, and she respects what I am saying to her. And I have told her that I do not want medication. I know I have this hyper awareness, and I would rather have that. And I think a lot of combat vets, people that have, you know, been face to face with the sort of things that we have to deal with, I think that they wouldn't want to lose that hyper sense of awareness. Because I think you literally don't feel safe anymore. So why, if you take drugs and that dulls those senses, you're not going to feel safe.
Maybe even feel more paranoid with the drugs. That's the last thing you want to do, is feel more paranoid.
Yeah, and I mean, it isn't as if I haven't been offered, because I have, and it's been my choice. No,
good for you.
I don't want to do it. I really believe in the skill sets that the military gave us back then, and every day I just try to fight through things.
Monica from our Facebook has a few questions, so I'll read a bunch of them and then you can answer. I came in late. What battalion did he serve with? Can he repeat his rank when he was retired? She's asking for a reason.
Okay, I will tell you that I was with 2nd Battalion, Royal Canadian Regiment out of Gagetown. So I had a little over 4 years with them. I got out. I was still a private, even though I was recommended. I had all my courses, and I was recommended for promotion. And at that time, it was the unified forces. So we all wore those green uniforms. Everybody wore those green uniforms. And it was supposed to be an automatic thing. You know, I've done my time. I've got all my courses, corporal. So then I got back in, and I was told that I would be given my rank back, but that's not what happened. I actually was frozen at the rank of private for another 4 years, despite the fact that I excelled through all the air trade training and even cross-qualified. I was airframe, and I even cross-qualified on engines. Again, it's something that happened in the military. They had a retirement dinner for me in the second time, the Air Force, and they actually presented me with a plaque, and I've got it here, and it actually has Corporal Bell on it, and they had a great retirement dinner, and I went up to the hangar chief after, and I said, "Sir, you made a mistake." And I said, "Look at what it says on this plaque. It says Corporal Bell." And he looked at that, and he looked at me. He said, "I didn't make the mistake. Somebody else made the mistake. You're entitled to that. That is justly, you know." So I've still got that plaque here, you know. I keep that, and I have a fond memory. You know, there were good people in there. I just think that there was an oversight, and it was never corrected.
Yeah, maybe you didn't take the drugs is why you didn't get promoted. They seem like, you know, that's some of the things that they like is, you know, people that are, you know, kind of more like an adult Lala, land to be able to just do things that, that
and from what I now know about PTSD, because I knew nothing about it, there's PTSD affects people differently. And with me, I am still, in many ways, still highly disciplined and focused, but I'm super aware of everything that is going on around me. So because of that, I keep to myself. I have a little bit of property around me. I like the trees around me, and I try to avoid going out, big crowds of people and whatnot, because I don't do well. I don't do well with crowds, unfortunately. But when I was in the military, I actually have seen people just completely snap. There's just nothing there anymore. So I really do think there are some circumstances where people do need the drugs. It just depends on at what level that PTSD has affected you. I've been actually diagnosed as having severe PTSD, but because I have this huge sense of awareness, and always trying to keep doing things right. I think that's what's still saving me today. But it's been a fight. I've had a lot of losses along the way, and I appreciate the wife of that veteran, all the things that she says that she's gone through, because that's very real. The spouse goes through hell, and the veteran, he's not doing that on purpose. He's not even aware of what the triggers are most of the time. So life can be hell for the families and friends. I know I've lost people along the way.
Yeah, we've had a few wives here. We have a few. Lori Root, who's a nurse, good friend of ours for many years. She's just recently retired, but she said she tried hard for 20 years with her husband, and her love couldn't save him. She said her ex was on lithium and Wellbutrin. It helped with the rages, but internally he was emotionally locked in. And then the kids go through that HE double hockey stick too.
Well, I have two stepchildren that they'll tell you they didn't appreciate it at the time because I was no longer in the military, but they tell people, despite that, they were brought up military. They were highly regimented and disciplined, and at the time they really did not enjoy it. But I can tell you now, in this day and age, they've actually thanked me for being raised that way, because they have a lot more survival skills than most people have their own age. So it just depends on the level of PTSD. It's a horrendous thing for the person going through it, and it's even more horrendous for the people around them, because they have no clue what is happening with this person and what triggers them. And like I say, I'm very thankful that I have a psychologist that has a whole lot of years of experience with military and first responders, because I find it's my perception of how conversations go. It can be really different. Ironically, you don't have room for that. You don't have room for that as a peacekeeper trying to keep the peace with people. But then you come out of it yourself with a completely transformed perception of how things are, and it's like, wow, how did I ever come out of that situation in the Middle East in one piece, but and now I can't deal with people here in everyday life. For the most part, I can. I'm pleasant with people, but I have to stay away. I like staying in the woods. I feel safe. Maybe because I spent so much time in Gagetown, living out in the fields in Gagetown. Who knows? But it makes me feel safe.
You probably have answered indirectly, but Monica with the veteran husband, she's the Canadian. Lori is with the U.S. vet. She was asking if you were ever on methaquin.
No, 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 no. My whole life long, to tell you the truth, I've been against drugs. I actually have an uncle who was a heart and brain surgeon, and I always listened to things he said. You don't want to load yourself up with drugs, and you don't want to lose your sense of any of your senses of awareness, and I just don't like how they make you feel, so I won't do it.
Lori says here, yoga is reportedly a big help to bring people back into the body, more helpful than pharmaceuticals. There's the emotional freedom technique, tapping. There's different skills that people learn, to help them with some of their stresses, some of their PTSDs. Have you looked into any, things like what's kind of your go-to if you start to relive some of the moments and you start to feel maybe a little bit anxious from, the stuff that's going on, for you to help yourself through it?
Well, I can tell you, I'm probably like most of the vets that are out there. I don't sleep at night. I'll get on Facebook and I see all these other vets, and so I talk to them. But the big thing was I didn't aware I wasn't aware that I had this until last summer. So I'm only recently now even starting to understand that this is what I've had. So and I'm now in rehab, through the military. I'm going through rehab. So I'm quite sure, things are going to be offered to me. I've actually been told about the yoga. At one time I used to do a keto, some martial arts. I don't know if getting back into martial arts will help or not, because martial arts is also about discipline and control. And I can say that physically, I really need to get back into shape physically, because I've been stuck for so long, not taking care of myself.
There's things like Tai Chi, Qigong, like the yoga, where, it's not really the combat, it's more of flowing and, through, energy, things like there's different practices that you could maybe try or do, and it doesn't have to be like, the Aikido or other disciplines of martial arts, but a lot of it is combat, and maybe you don't want to be into that combat type of scenario where you're looking to more like flow like water, like some of the other, disciplines that may be fun and may be able to, get you into a point where you're getting enthusiastic to go to class because, it feels so good to be there.
Well, and I think that is important. You have to feel good. You have to feel good mentally and physically. Physically, I've got issues from the military. I've got flat feet, and I've got other issues. So I think those will be easier to work on than the PTSD, to tell you the truth. But to demonstrate the discipline that I still have with some of this PTSD, I've been out there in situations with people, and just some of the things that they've said, and I've been triggered. But when I get angry, if it's somebody I know, I tell them, listen, just leave me alone or just let me walk away. And most of the time, that's what I do. I'm disciplined enough to still do that. But who wants to be triggered in the first place? So that's what the psychologist is working with me on is all those triggers and, you know, how to deal with them, different mental tricks and exercises. She's actually talked about yoga and whatnot, and some of the things that you've mentioned. And so I really appreciate you bringing them up and people on the show, because as I say, I'm just newly into this, newly 40 years with it, but I'm just, you know, finally being told what was wrong.
Yeah, and starting to look for different healing modalities, different things that will help you. We've got a few questions here, well, a few comments from our Rumble. I can't bring them up on the screen because Rumble doesn't allow that for some reason. It's not connected to the chat. But Susie 1963 says, "Why hasn't the military stepped in and take out Trudeau? They're supposed to protect us, not the government. Chinese invasion of our elections. The government treats veterans like garbage. Thank you for your service."
Unfortunately, I can agree that the military is not being well taken care of. I've seen it. I've met some of the younger vets who have served in Afghanistan, and I was actually out with a really good friend of mine, a fellow vet, and he's been fighting with leukemia. And we ran into this Afghan vet, and the Afghan vet just sat back for the longest time without saying anything, listening to us. And then he asked, are you guys veterans? Are you military guys? And we said, yes, we are. And he asked, you know, the typical questions. Where are you from? Oh, Gagetown, and, you know, 2 RCR. And turns out he was, you know, a younger veteran from like I say, he was in Afghanistan. And he started opening up about his experiences. And so we asked him, well, how come you're no longer in the military? And his answer was quite simply, what do you do with a combat vet when he comes home? What do you do with him? Like, even in the military, what do you do with a combat vet when he comes home? You can't treat that guy the same way when he comes back to his home base, because now not only is he a fully qualified soldier, now he's a fully experienced soldier. I mean, he's experienced what a soldier is meant to experience, and now he's back on his home base, and you can't put that guy through the same training and scenarios that you put on before he left. So I had to give that thought, and I thought, oh my God, this is really something. This is something that the military could focus on and stop losing people, because my answer to that is, well, now you need those people to go through advanced training, self-awareness courses, more courses out in the wilderness where they do feel more comfortable. Not only does it calm a person down, such as myself, but you still feel like you're still needed and wanted, and there's nothing worse than being dispelled from the military and being left feeling like you're no longer part of the team. You know,
Been abandoned.
You've been abandoned. I don't know. When I was in, I saw the discipline changing in the military, and there's some things I don't agree with today. Quite simply, one of them is, I'll be specific about it. dress and deportment. Uh, you expect a military guy to have short hair. You expect a guy to dress sharply and present himself as being a well turned out, clean, professional person. And the reason why you expect that is because of the person's discipline. You know that that person is highly disciplined. That's why he maintains that image. He's a professional person, highly turned out, dress and deportment. You can't say you can dress however you want with whatever, color hair, or I don't know, bones through your face or whatever. Like, I've seen some pretty bizarre stuff, but I don't trust what I see anymore either. You don't know if the media is being manipulated and somebody's putting that out there to get a response, And so there's another issue: trust. Trust has been broken with a lot of people in the military. As far as the government is concerned, it's a no-brainer. You need to defend the nation, and you have to be prepared to help in emergency situations. When I was in Gagetown, I spent one whole summer fighting forest fires. There's so many things that the military does that the public they're not even aware of it, because the military doesn't go and advertise that. But the government should be doing that. The government should say,
thanks to the military for doing this and providing service here, so people could really appreciate some of the things they do, opposed to just thinking the military is there for war. And
So,
people
yeah,
have a different feeling upon, if they knew that the military was doing much more, service to humanity, people would look at them a lot
it
with a
would
lot
be
more
valued
respect.
different. Yeah, it would be valued differently. I was in the Air Force after my time in the Army, and we were supposed to get the EH-101 helicopter. Now, there was a big to-do about it back then. It's always the same thing. These purchases become political footballs. I don't agree on the government doing that, and it shouldn't be a public political football. The EH-101 helicopter, for instance, was supposed to replace the Sea King helicopter. Now, the EH-101 was an all-weather helicopter. I mean, and think about it. If you are out in the Atlantic or Pacific Ocean in bad weather, you don't care, about that expenditure at the time. It's the right expenditure. You're going to go out and save lives. You can actually go out and save lives. But you see, nobody focuses on the civilian role that the military plays. They just focus on all the guts and glory stuff, which it's a bunch of crap. We spend most of our time actually here at home helping Canadians live a safe and secure life at home. So I think they really do a disservice when they don't give all the credit due to the military.
Now, when you go into public places, do you do the whole scan the area, look for the exits, look at people that are possible potential threats? Like, is that kind of,
Yes.
just kind of normal behavior for you to, look at everything as a possible, situation and just figure out the best way to go about that? Does that kind of involve maybe a little bit in that PTSD, that every place you go to could be a potential threat?
All the time. You don't want to be trapped anywhere. I remember being at Canada Wonderland with the kids. This was years and years ago. And all of a sudden, the clouds turned really dark and nasty, even like this horrible dark green color. And I've seen tornadoes before. I've actually seen them. So right away, I grabbed my wife and kids, and I found this big culvert in Canada's Wonderland, and I tucked them all underneath there as this unleashed on everybody, and everybody else was just standing looking at it. And by the time this thing opened up, we were safely in this culvert, as dry as could be. And my wife is probably here chuckling somewhere, remembering that. And she even asked, are you like this all the time? You're always aware. Yes, I'm always aware. Even driving on the road, I'm looking at what other people are doing all the time. Am I going to be safe? What's my route out of here? And so the answer is yes. Clearly, I do that, and that's the part of PTSD. Ironically, if that is truly the part of PTSD, I don't know if it's because of that or because of all my time in the combat arms, but that's the part that I would not want to lose by taking all these drugs that dull your senses.
Hence that they want that. So Andrea's comment here from our Facebook says, our freedoms come at a high price. Oh, so does padding the pockets for those who are at war, profiteers. I can't imagine how much that hurts those who served, or the families who have lost their family members due to the wars. The wars used to be, maybe fighting for freedom, but it seems like modern day, the last 30, 40, maybe even 50 years, it's about, God, but the wrong God. It's gold, oil, and drugs. It seems like that's what all the wars and this freedom that everybody's put their life on the line for, seems like those freedoms are being eroded, whether it's speech, whether it's financially. Like you can't even have really a one person, family working. You need the two. Now the kids are no longer, they're squeezing everybody. Everything is becoming more expensive. Almost, people that are young that can't even afford to buy a house because of how things are. It seems like we don't have the freedoms that people like yourself, put your life on the line for anymore.
So true. Greed, as you say, greed is at the root of a lot of this. I don't know how people can live with themselves. For instance, the price of groceries, that irks me like you wouldn't believe, and it must irk everybody. I mean, they're really hitting people in the stomach. And for somebody to say, oh, well, it doesn't have anything to do with what we're doing, and we're not really making that much profit. Well, if things haven't changed, assuming the product hasn't changed, but now as an older person, I've seen all kinds of groceries watered down. Look at the size of cereal boxes now, and look at the sizes of even cans of pop and whatnot. Everything's shrinking. Everything's being watered down, and they've jacked up the prices like 200-300%. That's greed. So I mean, you have to think about that. And I don't agree with the carbon tax either, because it's not really resolving the issue. But definitely when you put these high taxes on fuel, you're going to raise the prices across the board, because all our goods have to come to the market. Like, what are you thinking, supporting that kind of thinking where it actually hurts the citizens instead of helping them? And what were we doing everything that we were doing, and some of us not even coming home? I've seen a lot of friends pass, and you sit here and you think, what's it all for? Anyone working for the government, politicians included, you have a responsibility to your constituents. We have a a responsibility in the military to the people. We're there to help the people and save the people. We're there to, as a fail safe, and when there's disasters, to pick up the pieces and haul those people out there and get them back on their feet. We're not there to be an extra police force or anything evil. And yet, look at how we're treated. When I'm having this conversation, I'm thinking about Admiral Norman and General Danny Fortin. I think about how some of the high-ranking members are being treated, and it's shameful.
It certainly is. You said that, the government is, responsible to the constituents, but, as we find out, that's not even the case. And it's really sad to see. There was a politician in Wetaskiwin, Alberta, I think his name was Stonechild. And he said that one of his things that he was telling the people is he was going to vote against the GST. We're going to vote against the GST. And that's what he told the people, and the people in his town elected him. And out rolls the GST vote once he was in, and he voted for the GST. And people were livid. And they said, how could you tell us you're not going to vote? We vote you in and you vote for the GST. And so they took him to court. They were so upset, they took him to court. And the judge said that no member of any level of any government is responsible to its constituents. This judge said this. You can look at the court case in Wetaskiwin, Alberta, with Stonechild. GST is the general sales tax. It's a 5% tax that they've added on top. Some provinces have PST, which is provincial sales tax. GST is general sales tax for the whole country, opposed to the provinces. In Alberta, my province, we don't have any provincial sales tax like other provinces do. And he said that in the court findings that no level of government, any level of government, that they're responsible to the constituents. They're responsible to the Crown and corporation. That's who their loyalties are. And he said that in a court case that people can look up. And it just shows how corrupt and how criminal our system has become. When you think that, the government is supposed to be by the people, for the people, you represent somebody, you elect somebody to represent you, represent your best interest, but they don't have your best interest. It's the best interest of the lobbyists, the corporations, and to the Crown in Canada. That's where their loyalties lie. And, they can get even vetoed by the Governor General, by the Queen, any of these things that go in. Like, people say, well, the Queen, it doesn't have any power, it's just a figurehead. But they have all the power, and people are not aware that the Crown is the Bar Association, the law, the judges. It's all the Crown, which is the Queen, and monarchy is they go by those type of rules. When the RCMP swear their oath, they swear to the Crown, allegiance to the Crown. That's where they swear their allegiance to. And I'm not sure how the Canadian military was if you had to swear your allegiance to the Crown.
We swear an allegiance to the country. So I have a response for that too, because I'm going to use words my grandfather taught me when I was young. Integrity is a gift that you can only give yourself. So clearly, these people that behave that way have no integrity. So they shouldn't be in these positions. And the people do determine who sits in these positions. It is the job of the people to actually do their job and make sure people without integrity don't get voted into these positions. So, just as I and many others had a job in the military to perform, the people have a job to perform. You can't be lackadaisical and say, well, I'm not going to vote because it doesn't matter. It does matter. I mean, that's the root of all of our problems today. I'm sick and tired of hearing. I've watched in Parliament and in the Senate of this response. Thank you for the question, and then the question is never answered.
It's never answered.
There's this big smirk that it doesn't matter what you answer. We have an agenda, and we're going to just follow that agenda. It doesn't matter about the people. You're right. But the people still have the power to do something about it, and they've got to stand up and do the right thing. Think about that. Integrity is a gift you can only give to yourself. But if you're not willing to stand up and do what you're supposed to do, then you have no integrity. Plain and simple.
Most people are still very programmed, and they feel that they're a left or a right, they're a blue or a red. It's one side or the other, and both sides are controlled by the same evil bird. Both have the same wings of the same bird that's controlled by the bankers, that are controlled by the lobbyists, that are controlled by, this money, opposed to doing the right thing. So you can get a person with integrity that wants to get into the politics, that joins one of these parties, but when they find out they can do little to nothing. And Elaine said it really good here. She said, you can't change the mafia by joining it. And it's like a criminal mafia what the government has become. And it's not people with integrity. And even if people go in with integrity, they find out they can't do anything. They're quashed, they're silenced, they're honeypotted, they're all kinds of things, blackmailed. Lots of things happen to people that get into these positions of power where there is no justice. We do not have a country. We do not have a justice system. We do not have a political system that is run by the people, for the people, that's fair to the people. And that's kind of where we've come to as a society as a whole. And this is just as in Canada. This is just as in USA. They own all the countries, as we saw what happened with this last 3 years, how everybody just follows suit and does these things and injects these things into themselves and does what the government and the media and the news says and tells them to do, whether or not it's good or bad for them. People just follow along. And that's where we're running to a big issue, that so many are just believe their doctors, believe their government, believe their politicians, believe their media, and it's fully corrupted. It's a cesspool of filth. And people can't see beyond that because they just want to believe that people are good. There isn't bad people. Why would they lie to us? Why would they do that? And this has happened, not just in the last 10 or 50, maybe 100 or maybe even thousands of years, coming to the point in time in history where these people have been pulling the strings. And now, because of social media, because the world is now talking to each other, we've been becoming more awake and aware, but there are many that are still programmed.
I agree 100% with everything that you said, but I think there's still examples out there of countries where the people have done the right thing. They've Iceland, I believe it was. The people in Iceland had a completely corrupt government, and the people decide, no, we've had enough of it. It's no longer about party politics, as you said. The whole thing's corrupt, and we want you all out of there, and you guys are going to jail. So they did. They disposed the government, and they've turned things around. It's still going to take the people to stand up at some point and say, well, we've had enough of this, because the way things look now is there's a small minority are gaining power, influence, and wealth, and the rest of the country is swirling down a drain. So party politics, as you say, I mean, it's a mess. I mean, I studied political science in university, and if you looked at a liberal, for instance, in political science way back, you used to see that they were the party of consensus. They were never too far right, never too far left. They were always the people that, followed consensus. Well, they're clearly not like that now. They don't listen to anyone. And I understand why, people are so disillusioned with the parties now, because you can't count on anybody to do what is right for the people. I mean, we hope one day something will happen and this will all turn around, but it's still up to us to do something about it. Don't get lost in the idea that there's nothing can be done. That's only true if you don't stand up. If you don't stand up, then nothing can be done. Nobody can help. Not even the military can help, because the military has no power.
If you believe nothing can be done, then nothing can be done. If enough people believe that nothing can be done, then nothing will be done.
That's right.
But if people believe in their hearts and they see it and they know it and they want to do something about it and they know that they can change it, there is the power of the people. There is the power in numbers. And that's one of the reasons why the missing link came about, is to enlighten people about what's going on in the world. When that first year of lockdown happened, that's where we started this. And we've interviewed over 50 doctors now that are speaking out against the agenda. We're trying to get everybody's voice, so that way, we can have people that listen. Like, I just had a conversation with someone that I've been friends with for many years, and I'm telling him about stuff that's going on, and he's saying I need mental help because I'm making him aware of things, and he's just, no, you don't read, that's not true. And I was calling, like I said, he was mad at me because I said, happy American Slave Day today, right? And he went off, and you don't know nothing, you don't know what that means, you don't read, and you need mental help. And he's like going off on me. And because and I've been researching this stuff for 30 plus years, so I know a lot more than most people know about what's going on in the world. So when I hear people like that, I said, it's exactly what a slave would say, I said to him, right? And, he didn't like that because he comes from money, right? And they have a lot of money, so he's not a slave, right? So he doesn't see it, but it's just, this is the battle that I face every day, of trying to make people aware that are fully programmed and believe that, things are running optimally, when, as we see the destruction of this earth, we see what's happening to, people being squeezed every day and more people are hurting and suffering. We're not getting better. Things aren't getting there. The earth is being decimated, fires everywhere, that whether that's in purpose or not, they're spraying all this stuff in the air. Like, we need to keep on having conversations with people to make them aware, so maybe we can get enough people where we can stop some of these things that are happening to us collectively.
Yes. Have you ever seen the movie Midnight Express?
It maybe a long time ago. It seems like I remember the name, the title, but I don't really remember the movie.
So what it's about, and I believe it was in the 70s that this happened. An American tourist, or he decides to go over to Turkey and bring back some hash and make some money. Well, I've been on the Turkish side, obviously, and I know how it works. It's true. When you're over there, all that stuff is legal. I mean, I saw some guy actually crawling out of an opium bar, and this was when I was in the 80s. I was just walking down the street, and I went by one of those places with what do they call it, a huska or something? You know, the big pipe, all these guys attached to it, and it was all smoky in there. And I saw some guy crawling out of there. He had striped bell-bottom pants on with sandals, and he had a tie-dye shirt with little granny glasses and everything. And I swear that guy just woke up from the 60s out of this place, and he's crawling out of there. Well, in any event, that's how legal it is. They're able to, poppies and opium and hash, they're allowed to do all that stuff over there, but they're not allowed to drink alcohol. In any event, this movie was about this guy that decides, well, this is pretty premium stuff. We're going to bring some of that back and make some money. And he ends up being thrown in a Turkish prison. And I know that they're brutal. I had a friend, two guys I know, thrown in there. They are brutal prisons. And so this guy lost his mind because he just couldn't get out of the corrupt Turkish legal system. He was in there, and he was quite mad. So the scene that I was just thinking about as you're describing what's happening today with the government and their whole situation right now is finally this guy, something happens to him, and all these madmen are walking around in a circle. Well, he decides to bring himself out of the insanity that he will walk against a circle. So as he's doing that, everybody's stopping him saying, "You're crazy. Like, what are you doing? You're disrupting the flow. You got to go with the flow. You can't be doing that. You're going to disrupt things and you're going to break something. You're going to break the wheel." And that's what has to happen. I mean, you have to do what you're doing, and let people know that there is still hope out there. There's people still thinking properly, critical thinking, I might add, critical thinking. Don't go with the flow. I mean, look at what's happening. Can you eat? Can you feed yourself? Can you keep a roof over your head? Can you travel back and forth? You can't do any of these things anymore. That's all your freedoms disintegrating right in front of you. I mean, I'm seeing now that mortgages are, I can't believe it. Mortgages are going to 60 and 90 years because nobody can afford a house anymore. I mean, who would have figured? Who would have figured that just a few short years ago?
So crazy. Someone asked earlier, I'm trying to find the comment, what your thoughts were on 9/11.
Ooh. Well, I mean, there's a lot of so-called conspiracy theories there, but I don't think that they're really conspiracy theories. I think there was definitely, before 9/11 happened, there was an attack that was prevented. They found an IAM was behind that, and a lot of people were arrested. So they had already unsuccessfully tried it before, right? Terrible loss of life, and I think there's some biblical reference to it too. So I've always been worried about biblical references where, a country, for instance, like Russia or somebody says, okay, well, we're going to teach them a lesson. It says right here in Revelations, here's the sign. So we're just going to go ahead and do this, and we're going to make them all seem like they're crazy, because that's actually psychological warfare. I mean, it is happening. It's happening everywhere you look. Psychological warfare. Nobody can trust anything anymore. So they just say, oh, it's conspiracy theory. Just, go with the flow, man. It's nothing to worry about. Eventually we're all going to be fine. No, we're not.
So is there anything that, maybe you haven't been able to share yet so far that you wanted to share with us here today before we do wrap this up?
Well, I obviously know that there is a cost of freedom. We all know that. I know everybody knows that. There's a cost to freedom. But when you've completely lost your freedom, it's almost impossible to get out of that situation. The gun control issue is one of those issues. That was obviously a right written into the Constitution of the United States, the right to bear arms. The situation that we're seeing here in Canada, yes, it's terrible if anyone doesn't use a weapon properly. And I know that more so than anyone. Look at what I've been going through I've been lost in a dark place for a long time, but I still believe in the right to bear arms because that's what keeps the government honest. It did back then, and it still does today. And besides that, there's a lot of people out there that actually enjoy the sport and whatnot. There's a lot of people that they have to hunt to eat. I live in a province here, New Brunswick, where if you told people you were going to take away their gun, there'd be riots because they can't afford the groceries. They're going out there and they're eating deer meat and moose and rabbit and whatnot. So think about your freedom when it's lost, when it's completely lost. Then how do you get back out of that situation? You got to stand up. It's easy now to continue standing up and saying, no, I'm not going to take this anymore. Blaine Higgs, the premier of this province, stood up just recently for the parents' rights to, decide what's appropriate for their children in schools. Well, good for you, because it is the parents' right to stand up and do that. And if we are all doing, contributing in that way, in small ways, and collectively, maybe we can get out of this. But for God's sakes, you have to stand up, And as far as anything else is concerned, I've covered everything. I appreciate the time. Once again, I want to thank the American Brother Foundation in the United States taking care of all those Marines. This is obviously the 40th anniversary. This October 23rd is the 40th anniversary of that terrible event. And they're actually releasing a documentary this year in the fall. So if people look out for it, you can have a little bit of taste of what I got firsthand. And I was proud to help them back then. I was proud to serve Canadians and still proud to be Canadian. Don't ever lose that. Just stand up and do what you're supposed to do.
That's what we need more than ever, is people standing up, and we're finding that more and more people are. There's a lot of underground groups that are getting together to do some things to take back our system, our way of life, our governments. We're all supposed to be very wealthy here. We're the richest probably country, if not in the world, with resources, and they're funneling it all out. They're sending it to here and there. And like there's countries that have been before, like Venezuela and Libya, which they shared in the resources of the country's wealth. And gas was like 15 cents a liter, and whenever anybody got married, they got bonuses of $50,000. And if you were a farmer, the government bought all the farm equipment for you. Like, this is how things should be run, in a country. But right now, we're still in a corporation. We're registered on the stock exchange. We're not really a country. We're a corporation. And I think that's where things need to change, where, to get our sovereignty back is what we need, is, to really bring down this house of cards, this system of corruption and slavery that seems to want, everybody either completely enslaved, completely squeezed to every single ounce that their, human currency has, or even worse, with the rollout of these shots, everybody dead, right? So,
Right.
That's kind of what we're all, facing here today. And we appreciate you coming and sharing your story, your account of, what happened to you 40 years ago, and just for honoring, the people that stood with you there, honoring the Americans. That's, you thought it was a good day to come here on July 4th, was a good day to share this story. And, thank you from all of our hearts. It seems like, you have a very good heart, and, you've been battling through some things, and there's a lot of people that have listened to here that are probably around you as well, that love and support you. So just keep going, and we'll figure out how to make this better.
Well, again, thank you for the opportunity, and for everybody listening to the show, thank you for the support. I appreciate it. And I'm still here. I'm still here. I'm still fighting, doing what I can do, So that's all you need to know. There's actually more of us out there than you think. Just stand up. You'll see. Just stand up.
Now is the time. So thank you very much. Thank you. May the source be with you, Michael, in all that you do, and protection around you for the rest of your journey. Thanks everybody for all your likes, comments, hearts, shares, and stars. We appreciate all of your love and support. Please share this out. May the source be with y'all. I'm Jesse Howell, the host here of The Missing Link. And, we'll see you next time we see you. Tomorrow we're supposed to have someone who's been injured by the injection here on The Missing Link, but I haven't heard a confirmation, so we may be having a day off tomorrow if she doesn't respond. So we may not, be on tomorrow, just to let everybody know that is listening to this or is listening on the replay. Thanks again. If tomorrow, and it's supposed to be Josephine J. Walsh, and if not, then we'll be back on Thursday at noon Eastern Standard Time with Todd Medina from Zoology. Him and his lady were on before we were on their show. And, we'll just keep on keeping on and enlightening anybody willing to listen. So thanks again. Thanks for your service, Michael. And, we've already had requests to bring you back on. So maybe around the October 23rd time, if you wanted to come back and, share it again at that time, and just, that might be a good time to bring you back on if you don't have other engagements on at that time.
Sure. Thanks once again, Jesse. I really appreciate it.
You're very, very welcome, brother. All right, everybody, have a great night, and we'll see you next time we see you back on The Missing Link. Sending love to y'all, and may the source be with y'all. Bye, everyone.
Bye.